I'm looking forward to hearing.
Being recorded Zoom meeting.
Okay, thank you very much, Jacques, and thank you also to everyone for attending. I really, really appreciate it. Tonight, I'm going to be covering 3 themes. I'm trying to pull some of my poems together around some themes, and I'm going to reflect a little on identity as one of them. And this is in relation to my own mixed identity of being Filipino and Scottish and ancestry, living in South Africa, growing up in different countries, including the Caribbean, North Africa, the UK, and always being identified as other. And the second part will be sort of exploring some of the themes that are emerging in the book that follows, Glowfly Dance, my first book, which is very much based on my own childhood. And some of the, just sometimes I find it easy to explore some of the themes through writing poems about some of the scenes. And the third part will be around the theme of birds, which is a kind of linking it together through ideas of freedom, flight, and what that really means in relation to who we are. So this is my first poem, Flight. I have no feet, although I have been dancing all my life. Migration is my birthplace. They talk of roots, but ancestry defies me. I have always aligned with birds because they master winds that toss them like angels. A home has always been a space of survival, traveling while losing my belongings in transit. Sometimes I am searching for a family deep underground, but who I cannot reach through a peephole, or with a sense that memory escaped me through multiple rooms of people, or the suitcases of my life left behind at the airport. Sometimes water comes up and I peer into translucent depths of underground ocean. I fly because I have no feet. They wear families like armor. I have wings of memory and possibility. This is actually in relation to one of the scenes from Glowfly Dance, which I thought worked very well as a poem. School education. My first day at school is where I learned to disengage from myself. My slanted eyes when the children asked what was wrong with them. Why do they go up at the sides? My mother said they were perfect, but I saw defect. Not realizing their Asian roots, I decided I must have been moving too much and had strained them in the dim light where I could hardly see myself. Clearly imperfect and sullied with the disease of moon face, my half-sister's full English pale face deemed beautiful, not the stone thrown at head with the word chink at 5 years old, displaced to the realm of other places, outside, tracing dull wing slants of a missing father and an ocean of empty breath. And so on the same theme, this is actually in relation to an artwork I created as well, and it's the story I tell within a sort of art film piece, if those who've seen it, and for those who haven't, this is the story. Displacement. I am displaced from the reality of self. A plate holding my slanted eyes declared the eye operation very nice by a Chinese stall holder who marveled at my Eurasian epicanthic folds, and the men in salsa clubs who smiled as if in collusion with the words, I love you, in languages I did not understand. And I almost wanted to apologize to them for the loss of their illusion and memory of backstreet bars in illicit tourist Asian areas when they realized I could not hold it. and the Uzbekistani woman who wanted to hug me as a fellow villager. And then the memory of the old man who refused to serve me because he had been a Japanese prisoner of war, even though he knew I was not Japanese. And the British customs official who said my lipstick was liquid, and that in this country we have strict security regulations. And I told him, this is my country, even though I knew deep down in some secluded part of me that it wasn't, because of the stone thrown and the word chink when I was 5. And the people who said I spoke English very well, even though it was my first language. And the time of Tiananmen Square, when the blonde customs officials said to each other, this will be fun, and disassembled every part of me in my luggage, snickering, unfolding underwear with large male clumsy fingers and holding them up for reaction. But by now, I had learnt the cold mystery of the Orient and the face that gave away nothing, not even my hurt or displeasure at the game of assigned identity. And so sort of moving on, this assigned identity also sort of applied very interestingly to when my book Lo-Fi Dance came out. So it has a cover on it. And this is about the story around it. Cover girls. The publisher shows me the cover of my book with the face of a Caucasian girl. And I say, she should have slanted eyes. And he says, the public won't mind. And I say, it's important. Racism is part of the book. And he says, it doesn't matter. And I say, if it was a white woman's story and you put an Asian girl on the cover, it would be important. And he says, it will be hard to change it now. And I say, the designer can do it. And eventually they give the girl on the cover slanted eyes. And I am deemed difficult, even though if it had been the other way around, they would have been deeply apologetic and said, the designer must have been on drugs. We are so sorry for the mistake. What were we thinking? We will address it immediately. But at least the girl on the cover looks back now with eyes that see everything. So I think a lot of people know with my book, Lo-Fi Dance, it's a lot to do with gender violence and issues around it. And I often have to speak in public around it. And it's very interesting to see the kinds of responses that I get. Trigger warning. On the trauma panel, the convener warns everyone they can be triggered. I did not realize I was gun pointing, that a childhood story in the form of a written book had the power to disturb and that some would want to leave. I did not realize the voice I argued for against silence would come with a warning. Who am I shooting with the need to speak truths? We keep saying we must speak out, but maybe we need a space to freely hear and question. People only speak when deaths happen, when the press bursts out into stories of women's bodies found in gutters or shot or strangled, and then there are no trigger warnings. Perhaps we should have allowed voices to try to speak earlier instead of grieving silent bodies. The broken chandelier. The broken chandelier is perhaps more beautiful in its many fragments, in its disorder. Released from the threads that strung the pieces, now each section has significance. You can try to imagine how together the parts captured light, but now each shard has its own fragmented existence of sparkling hope. The brutal world machine. Brutality 1. Her broken face I never saw. That look. You can switch a body to a mausoleum of itself in the moment of a fist. I am a child who counted knives, the moments before footsteps, the turn of key and lock. We knew death before it came, practiced in the way that children do. She called for help. They still didn't hear. She has been calling all our lives, but no one hears when the sound is interior. No one ever hears from the inside. We were children, we heard, but no one listened. No one ever hears from the inside. Brutality 2. This poem is not the post-mortem we chose to see in innocence as clean medical students. The unnamed woman on the metal trolley is not what I remember in the way the anatomist weighed organs or how he extracted them. And I do not remember the naked body of a person with a history I did not know and the voice I did not know. And the fact the mortician said she died of cancer while showing metastases in brain and liver. And I still don't remember how we postured and stood in ways that pretended we knew what we were doing and how we were good medical students. But I do remember wishing medicine could give a name to bodies and the life that had carried them. Just in case you didn't know, I actually started out studying medicine, but then I changed to arts and anthropology. Brutality 3. My cousin was gentle and drank too much. When we were small, he showed great promise. When he was older, his breath stank of alcohol in the morning. He disappeared, reappeared on a beach. His funeral was celebrated in moments between drunkenness. I remember the kindness in his trapped eyes and the way he painted his pet cat across the walls of his flat, and the way he remembered me as a child and how we both loved drawing, and the story of his father walking out on his mother on my cousin's 7th birthday. Brutality 4. The more I try to write brutality, the more forgiving my poems become. Overtaken by gentleness and the wind blowing between the ticks of the clock, I look at the span of life and remember its quietness and the beauty of meadows and how flowers appear like bursting fruit in grass undergrowth, and the coiling clouds on a blue sky like opal. There comes a time when even brutality is spent and the world is a flower and words become petals and their word scent lingers where it is all soft and cuddly, and we touch open lips and nestle in ourselves comforted. Histories. The memory of forgetfulness in the stories that erase the ones that lived before and render them invisible. Mementos of washing done and shoes polished and the crumbling walls now lining streets once cobbled and created by hands, and the learning of dates stamped as achievements. Despite developments that unearth graveyards of forgotten memories that surface as ripples, then waves, that seek to rewrite and overturn time and its recording. And this is another poem in relation to the second book. Cycling. She cycles to school and sometimes stops at the corner shop and sometimes parks her bike outside and goes inside its dark interior to buy something to nibble. She is 16 and the world promises flowers, and she stops her bike and leans it against the wall and goes inside to purchase. And the elderly man inside greets her and she smiles. He reminds her of the Caribbean, so she stops and chats, and he tells her of his childhood in India and how the heat beat down, and she speaks of her time in the tropics, and she sees hummingbirds and flowers. And she is 16, and she goes inside and talks to the man behind his counter, and he talks a lot about his family and children and how London is difficult, and she is polite and listens. And then this time she goes inside, and he says, soon I will be leaving. You must stop by later and say goodbye. So on the way back, she stops and goes inside, and her bike is against the wall outside. And when she enters, he lifts the counter quickly and steps out and closes the shop door behind her and locks it before she realizes what is happening. And he takes her small face in his flaccid hands and kisses her cheeks, saying, my love, we will run away together, you and I, to another city forever. And she doesn't understand these arms around her and the discomfort of his white shirt, and her bike is outside against the wall. And she doesn't know what to say except, I was just being friendly. I didn't want to be more than your friend. And she looked at his tired face, and the bouquet of flowers between them shatters, his dream of escape gone forever. And he says, sorry, I will never say this again. And she says, I will be late. And he opens the door, and her bike is outside. And she feels bad, he understood things differently. And the kisses feel bad on her cheeks. And she is 16. And in future, the shop is closed, and she does not lean her bike on its wall anymore. I'm going to move on to some birds. My birds have too many poems. My birds have too many poems written into them. The way they carve phrases with circling bodies, finding territory and orientations from where to go beyond the anchor of flock and spilling clouds, swollen with sun and promiscuous blue. My poems have too many birds. The time the pelican scooped its beak into river, large body lifted beyond possibility. Below clouds sullen with the grey syllables of the grand pause of wing flight. My birds have too many poems. The writhing palindrome of starlings in tangled murmuration, of shifting stanzas, intense clauses and violent pauses. My poems have too many birds that have not yet fledged, their wings clipped, feathers broken, their songs stifled too young to fly. And I look out of the window, and all I see is birds. Falling to earth. This is also following the end of my book, Let's I Dance. Two girls fell to earth, and the aeroplane is a silver bird without wings, as they traveled the sunset into crimson and floated on a bed of feather clouds. It was a journey of 1,000 stories before their arrival, the way in which a life can snap like a twig and the entire tree falls, until there is no way to fill the blanks except to place new names, new families that impose their own branches you have to cling to. For if you fall, you will break like a chandelier, and children do not bounce. They need something to cling to because they are too young for roots and would topple without adult hands to hold them. It is like those bouquets they throw at weddings, and you don't know who will reach their arms out to grab the stems of promise. You fly like a wingless bird, and your label will say unaccompanied children, and the official will ask, are your parents meeting you? And you say, we don't have any, they are dead. And the official says, who are the people meeting you then? And you say, our guardians, we don't know them. And your sister whispers, I don't want to go to them. And you say, there's nowhere else we can go. And outside the window, the sun was beautiful, as it set in a pool of gold and crimson, and the clouds were as soft as cotton wool. And you hoped the landing would be as soft and delicate as the clouds, but you knew it wouldn't the moment they slapped the label, unaccompanied children, upon you. Weaving. The weaver bird has artistry in its genes. Its branches hold a woven web of caves, an offering of yellow belly and black-beaked eagerness amidst the stripped bare leaves and dancing courtships. The memory of other learnings, other lives that infuse being. The transaction of love will be done, the fledglings ready with embedded knowledge of the next evening to come. Starling. The starling arrives on my work window and looks inquisitively, as if it questions the ideas I am trying to assemble. Head tilted, eyes sharp, it sings a song that beats this poem anytime. This is when you lose the page that you didn't write down the page that it was actually on. Okay, I'll read the one that was on the site when the notice went up on the red wheelbarrow. Screaming. We are still screaming silently since the day of birth, when we were hushed so others could sleep. Today, the Egyptian geese are singing in pairs in the gardens, as the 4 white albino squirrels that survived the pandemic convince us of miracles. And a man washes a trumpet in the still pond water, its golden gleaming surface bathed in rivers of reeds and sunlight. Later, the trumpet sings, honking a discordant half tune, and 2 geese freeze in their swimming, lifting their heads, trying to decipher the song, but they can't. And the scream of trumpet continues, harnessing attention. The passing people remain silent. They have not yet learned to scream again. The disheveled trumpeter shakes his head, lifts his cap from the grass as the albino squirrels become dust and the whisper of tree branch, the quiver of feathers as the beasts move on again in rippling paddles of wet feet, their claim to territory gratefully unchallenged. Gratitude. The birds are circling again, their wings golden arrows of captured sunlight, in dancing avenues of connection. And the mountains earlier sprang rivers of rain that flooded roads and destroyed homes. And the circling of birds is a poem written in freedom and synchrony. And the traffic is a silver snake, and a man on crutches approaches a man in a blue sports car at an intersection and is full of gratitude for the few coins. And the birds circle, and he does not see their captured light or dance. And the sports car moves on and becomes a silver snake, and the mountain is beautiful with its streams of reflected light like diamonds coursing its surface. And the coins capture and reflect the sunlight. And the birds circle and fragment, each leading the fray, each carrying a golden arrow of sunlight, until the sky is depleted. Only the red residual anger of hopes left unfulfilled, sinking behind mountain tops, dragged into darkness. How much time do I have left, just so I know?
10 more minutes.
Oh, a lot more. Okay, I thought I'd come to the end. I've just got actually a few more. We might end a little earlier then. A bandage, a kiss. She remembers a world filled with the clattering beaks of school children, in murmurations of sparrows as she flew amongst them on her child legs that could not be contained. Her feathered heels lifting her beyond concrete playground, swinging her from metal climbing frames that reversed the world to mirror image. Her feet treading sky, watching the grass emerge from the cracks in concrete above her dangling head. It was then they flew like pigeons, navigating the turn of earth from the place within, the nest called home, the smile, the laugh, the graze of the knee, so easily healed with a bandage, a kiss. These days, the kiss is no longer a satisfactory bandage. She carries the wounds of too many kisses at the wrong times, in the wrong place. The man who took too much and thought a kiss could replace the aching gap of life he stole. The slippery kiss of lips on cheek, of man impaling body without consent. The kiss of another whose same lips threw words of destruction and hate earlier in the day, and his insistence she not be cold and unresponsive. These days she sends kisses and hearts on social media to friends, hoping if she sends enough, they will heal the many inappropriate kisses they have ever received. The third song will be glorious. I am trying to listen to this poetry discussion, all very serious stuff, but they said the word light, and two starlings entered through a window at the end of the long hall, and the starlings are speaking too, complex phrases and lifts of language, taking turns in the music of voice. And I wonder if they are speaking poetry to each other as they perform wing arcs from window to high beam, and whether poetry is included in their fluttering, from sill to syllable, from feathered pause to darting phraseology of beaks and exclamation of bird song. Is it haiku? Is it sonnet? Or some unknown form spoken only by starlings, performed in rhythm of beak and wingspan? The poetry session is finished. The clapping of audience punctuates flight, the starlings pausing as if responding to accolades before exiting back to sky. And I return to seats, speakers, and the door that beckons thought and freedom. I think I'll round off with this one. The next journey will speak of birdsong and return to spiraling wind eddies and the way that sunlight refuses containment and spills between clouds and dark barricaded walls of silence and the shadows of past rain and the scent of freshly beaten earth. And then the shoots will come again and the birdsong will be glorious.
Thank
So
you.
that was it.
If everyone wants to clap, you're welcome to unmute and clap quickly.
Woo! Thank you.
Then we've got some time for a Q&A if you're up to it. Is there anybody in our audience who would like to ask Jade something or comment on any of these poems we've heard tonight? So much food for thought there. I think from my side, I really enjoyed the sort of storytelling aspect that many of your poems had. The one about the corner shop story and that connection, like, it just caught me by surprise the way you set it all up. It was like reading a story where you get to this reveal that I didn't see coming. So I thought that was really effective. Is it something that you try to do in your poems, to tell stories? I mean, I believe you write novels, other things as well.
That one is part of my second novel that I'm working on, and so it is a true story of something that happened, and it was exactly like that. But I don't really set it up as such. I just let the words come, and then they tell the story for me effectively. So yeah, I mean, sometimes my poems are more humorous, but in this particular case, I chose more serious ones. I wanted to try working around some themes. So I'm wondering if people find them too dark or if they like them dark. I'm curious what people feel. I see Jacques' hands up.
Yeah, Jacques, do you want to comment? We can't see you at the moment, and you must just unmute yourself as well. Not yet, Jacques. We can't hear
Put his
you.
hand up. Oh, is he muted?
Yeah, might be struggling there. Is there anyone else who wants to ask something while Jacques figures out technology?
Or if there's anything that struck them in any of the poems or they felt strongly about. Oh, there's something in the chat, is there? It's not something else.
Troyden's also got a hand up.
Yeah, I don't really have a question. Just Jade, you asked whether if we like how dark it is, or something along those lines. And you know, it's kind of like you know, like some movies some dramas when they've got serious content and there's real trauma there. it kind of leaves me shaken in a way. And I don't actually, it's not something that I seek out, but when I come across it, it can be very, depending on how it's done, you know, it's you know, and your poems are done very well in that it catches the trauma of the experience and the reflection in a way. And yeah, you know, it's a kind of poems that I think, you know, after you read them, you realize how tragic the human experience can be, and also how resilient humans can be to survive that. So yeah, that's pretty much, so, you know, like we'd often, like, depending on what kind of person you are, we might not seek out the darkness, but I think it's very necessary that we confront it.
Thanks very much, Troy. You know, it's always a worry when you're putting out the sort of darker stuff, and it's very important to. It's great to have a group like this where you get the feedback as well. You know, to see how and you know, just sort of how they work together as well, or if they work together, or if it becomes too much, you know. And it's that balance between the light and the dark, effectively, that I try to capture.
Yeah, I think yeah, you do a good job. Thanks, Jade.
Thank
I always
you.
feel horribly insecure about them before I'm reading them, you know. Maybe I shouldn't be reading this.
No,
So
I didn't find it too dark either. I think you balanced it very nicely, and I think that the topics you're writing about or sharing tonight are so relevant and so important. And the fact that, you know, I can tell that they're all coming from your own lived experiences and so on, makes it even more powerful. And I see Georgia in the chat also saying, I love the dark poems. The way you combine the light and dark aspects is surprising and really inspiring. I feel moved and some awareness stirs within, which is wonderful. Thanks for a wonderful reading. And Mary saying, your poem on identity was chilling. And that publisher put a Caucasian face in place of yours, really shocking in this day. Not dark, shining the light into the darkness that exists.
well, thank you very much, Georgia and Mary. And Alison, thank you to us. You made a comment as well.
Jacques, you're welcome to try again to unmute yourself. And if you've been hit by load shedding or something that's affecting your technology. And then Cindy has a hand.
Yes. Hi, Jade. Hi, everyone. Thank you, Jade, for that reading. I always love hearing you read. And I also think that you handle the light and dark with such skill. And what I really always am so surprised and taken aback by is when these surreal elements start bursting through the seams of the poems. You know, the car turns into a snake, I think was one of the lines in one of the poems, and I'm always just envious of your ability to defy expectations. We never really know where the poem is going, but there's always such beauty in the writing, but always such an element of the unexpected. And I always am thrilled when these sort of Dadaist or surrealist moments emerge in your writing. And I'm just wondering, you're a visual artist and a brilliant one at that. And would you just talk about how maybe that the world of visual arts has been really fundamental or impactful for you as a poet?
Yeah, I do think poetry is painting images in people's heads, really. 2 words, you know. And it's the juxtaposition of those images that perhaps bring the words alive and the moments alive. In a way that a painting probably doesn't, because I think painting presents everything at once, almost. I mean, you hope that the eye travels across the page, but there's a certain, it's somewhere between story and painting when you have a poem, in a way, because you have a narrative as well, but you're also layering image upon image. And I've sort of noticed that, you know, because when I did the bike poem, I was thinking, I keep going back to this bike, but is I should just allow these repetitions, because in a way it's that layering back again, and you come back, and then you add another layer and you come back again. And so there's something, it's a bit like painting, but it's also, it is this moving forward through time as well. But it's also a question mark. It's an exploration that I can find through words that painting doesn't do in the same way. I can explore materiality, I can explore color, I can explore texture and images and raise questions through something that I create visually. But I do also incorporate a lot of poetry actually into my artworks. I have done a lot of that. But yeah, I just follow the images, I guess. I just see what I see, and I let the words come out. And then, you know, I have a whole burst of poems that come in an enormous batch. And then I just eliminate all the really bad ones and move with the ones that resonate. Because I think that's just, I've realized, you know, I think Jacques and I were talking about how we write and having deadlines and so on. It actually, we just sit down and spew off poems under pressure quite well. And rather than, I'm very bad at slowly stewing over a poem for hours, just line by line. It has to come in bursts and capturing something. And then I sort of tweak and turn, and sometimes it never finishes itself, and other times it just creates itself after the third poem of that type, because you can see there's themes I keep returning to over and over. Yeah, I don't know if that makes any sense at all, actually.
That was wonderful. Yes, thank you.
Amazing, thank you. And then we've got a hand up from Ed. Just unmute yourself, Ed.
Hi, sorry. Jade, thank you. That was amazing. I really enjoyed the sequence for the poems, because I felt that the more hard-hitting, the darker poems, which are very powerful, with the bird poems, for example, and the poem that was used with the ducks and the screaming, the trumpeter, that sort of combines the light and the dark in some way. But it seems like those bird poems, even the poem with the chandelier, the things that are not, not obviously, or it's not immediately apparent, they're more like object poems or description poems, not doing it justice, but there's an echo, for example, in the chandelier poem. I picked one up between that poem and I think the Children Unaccompanied poem. Somewhere there's a reference, I think, to chandeliers in both poems. So, I mean, I don't know what other connections there might be like that, but that's quite fascinating. You know, the things that are not obvious but talk to one another. So I'm rambling, but I really felt that your selection was beautiful, and there was a conversation going on between the poems.
Yeah, I did actually try and exercise with the bird ones, where I took a line from the first bird poem and I used it to inspire a second bird poem. And then I took a line from that and then I used it to write the next one. And I kept working on and on like that. And then I had to remove some because they were too similar, but I found that quite fun actually. Just, you know, so there was a sort of attempt to connect things, and then there are images that do connect and recur, you know, in them, and I'm glad they work together, because I'm trying to think how to put them all together into something that makes sense, you know.
Yeah, I hope that the book of your poems does happen someday, because there's great stuff that I've heard from readings that you've given over the years, and I think you could have any number of themed collections.
That's it.
Okay. Is there anyone else, Jacques, doesn't seem like you're coming right, but you're welcome to try
Same.
again. You'll have to tell you some other time. Anyone else with a comment or question from the audience? You're welcome to just unmute yourself if that's easiest. Doesn't look like it. Okay. So then we're wrapping up the first part of the evening, but it's not over yet. So we say thank you to Jade for sharing the light and the dark with us, for being brave and vulnerable in experimenting here tonight. We're honored to have been a place for that. And we look forward to reading more of your work and to hearing you read again in the future. Thank you everyone for being here. We're going to take a short break, 5 minutes, and then we'll be back for an open mic. So please stick around and share some of your own work or that of a poet you love. We can clap once more for Jade.